My wife told me to pack my things and leave the house so her ex-boyfriend could move in. She said the deed was in her name and her parents would support her no matter what. I thought I had already lost everything. By nightfall, her parents made a choice she never expected. They didn't stand behind her. They stood behind me, and that decision changed our entire future. The morning it all fell apart started like any other Tuesday. I woke at 6:15, the way I had for the past 7 years, to the sound of my phone's alarm playing something gentle enough not to jolt me, but insistent enough to pull me from sleep. Beside me, Rachel's side of the bed was empty. That wasn't unusual. She'd been sleeping in the guest room for about 6 months now, citing my snoring, though we both knew it was about more than that. The excuses had become elaborate, the distance a living thing that grew in the spaces between us. I patted downstairs in my bare feet, the hardwood cool against my soles, and started the coffee maker. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the kids' fish tank bubbler. Our house, the one we'd bought 5 years ago, a sprawling colonial in a neighborhood with good schools and neighbors who waved from their driveways. The one I'd poured weekends into, painting, landscaping, building that deck out back. The one whose mortgage I'd paid every single month, sometimes working overtime to cover it when Rachel's part-time design gigs were slow. By 7 a.m., I had the kids' lunches made and their backpacks by the door. Emma, 8, with her mother's dark hair and my tendency to worry. Lucas, 6, all chaos and energy and missing teeth. They clattered down the stairs, arguing about a toy, and I herded them toward the breakfast bar. "Daddy, can we have pancakes?" Lucas asked, his eyes hopeful. "School day, buddy. Pancakes are for weekends. You've got cereal or toast." "Cereal," they said in unison, and I smiled. At least they agreed on something. Rachel appeared in the kitchen doorway as I was pouring milk. She was dressed already, which was unusual. She worked from home most days and typically stayed in yoga pants until noon. Today she wore jeans and a nice blouse, her hair freshly washed. "You're up early," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I have things to do." She didn't look at me, just grabbed an apple from the bowl and a bottle of water from the fridge. "Everything okay?" "Fine." The word was a door slamming shut. I wanted to push, to ask about the guest room, about the distance, about the way she'd been whispering on her phone late at night and hanging up when I entered the room. But the kids were right there, and I'd learned that arguments before school left them anxious all day. So I let it go, the way I'd let so many things go over the past year. After I dropped Emma and Lucas at school, I headed to my own job. I'm a project manager for a commercial construction company, which means I spend my days herding schedules, budgets, and the egos of architects and subcontractors. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and it had allowed Rachel to quit her full-time agency job when Emma was born and work freelance instead. We'd agreed on it together. She wanted flexibility, time with the kids. I wanted to provide that for her. That afternoon, I got a text from her at 3:47. "We need to talk. Tonight. Kids will be at Mom's." I stared at the message for a long moment. We'd had talks before. Discussions about the distance, about counseling, she refused, about what was wrong. They always ended the same way, with her deflecting, me apologizing for things I wasn't sure I'd done, and the status quo remaining firmly in place. "Okay," I replied. "What time?" 6. They'll pick them up from school. So she'd already arranged it. The kids were already going to her parents' house. This wasn't a conversation she wanted to have. It was an announcement she planned to make. The rest of the workday was a blur of meetings I couldn't focus on and emails I answered on autopilot. By 5:30, I was pulling into our driveway, my stomach a knot of anxiety and a strange, weary resignation. Whatever was coming, I'd been bracing for it for months. Rachel was in the living room when I walked in. She sat in the armchair by the window, the one she'd bought at an antique store, and reupholstered herself. She looked composed, almost serene, which was more terrifying than if she'd been crying. I sat on the couch across from her. "Okay, I'm here. Talk to me." She took a breath, and I watched her steel herself. This was a performance. She'd rehearsed it. "I don't love you anymore." The words landed like stones in still water. I'd suspected, of course, but hearing it was different. It was real in a way suspicion could never be. "I've been unhappy for a long time," she continued, her voice gaining confidence. "We've grown apart. You're focused on work and the kids, and I'm not the same person I was when we met." I nodded slowly. "I know things have been hard. I've asked you to go to counseling with me. You said no. Counseling won't fix this. This isn't something to fix. It's just over. Okay, I said, and the word felt inadequate. So what does that mean? We separate? Divorce? She shifted in her chair, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something else in her eyes. Nerves. Anticipation. It means I need you to move out. The room felt suddenly cold. Move out. Rachel, this is my house too. It's not actually. She said it quietly, but there was a sharp edge beneath the words. My parents helped with the down payment. It's in my name. I stared at her. We bought this house together. We picked it out together. I've paid the mortgage for 5 years. Every single month. You paid the mortgage from the joint account. Money I contributed to as well. Legally, the deed is in my name. My parents' names are on it as secondary. You're not on the deed. I felt like I'd been punched. It was true. When we bought the house, her parents had offered a substantial down payment gift. Rachel had handled the paperwork with a real estate attorney her family had used for years. I'd been working double shifts at the time, trusting her, trusting that marriage meant partnership. I'd never thought to check the final deed. I'd sign what she put in front of me. I need you to understand, she said, leaning forward, her eyes hard now. You don't own this house. You never did. My parents will back me on this. They'll tell you the same thing if you ask them. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? She was telling me I was homeless in my own home. There's something else, she said, and now she couldn't quite meet my eyes. I've been seeing someone. He's going to move in. After you're gone. The words hung in the air between us. Someone. She'd been seeing someone. The late-night whispers. The distance. The guest room. It all clicked into place with a sickening clarity. Who? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She hesitated, then met my gaze with a defiant lift of her chin. Mark. You remember Mark. I did remember Mark. Mark was her ex-boyfriend from college. The one she dated for 3 years before we met. The one she'd always said was just a friend when his name came up. The one who'd sent her flowers when her grandmother died, who'd shown up at her birthday parties, who'd always been a peripheral figure in our lives. I'd been uncomfortable with it, but I'd trusted her. I'd believed her when she said there was nothing there. You're leaving me for your ex-boyfriend, I said, my voice flat. We reconnected. It happened. I'm sorry you're hurt, but this is my life. I deserve to be happy. And he's moving into this house. The house I helped pay for. He'll contribute. It'll be fine. She stood, as if the conversation were over. I want you out by the end of the week. You can take your clothes, your personal things. The furniture stays. The kids will stay here with me. You can have visitation on weekends. The kids. She was talking about my children like they were items to be divided. You're telling me I have to leave my kids too? They'll be fine. You'll see them. This will be easier for everyone if you just cooperate. I stood up, my legs unsteady. Easier for you, you mean? Don't make this ugly. Her voice was cold now, all pretense of sympathy gone. My parents will back me. You know they will. I'm their daughter. You're just the guy I married. They'll support me. They'll support whatever I need. I thought of Paul and Diane, her parents. They'd always been kind to me, warm even. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, advice on home repairs from Paul. But she was right. They were her parents. Blood. In any dispute, blood would win. I was an outsider, a man who'd married into their family. I had no claim. I need some time, I said. To think. To process. You have until Friday. She walked out of the room, leaving me standing alone in the living room, surrounded by furniture I'd helped pick, walls I'd painted, a life I'd built on ground that was suddenly revealed to be quicksand. I don't remember the next hour. I think I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. I know I didn't cry. The shock was too deep for tears. I just existed in a numb void, replaying her words, trying to find the moment when my marriage had become a transaction, my home a lease space I was being evicted from. At 8 p.m., I heard the front door open and the sound of the kids' voices. Rachel's parents had brought them home. Paul's voice, low and concerned. Diane's, higher, asking Rachel something I couldn't make out. Then footsteps, and the kids burst into the living room. Daddy, Grandma got us ice cream. Lucas launched himself at me, and I caught him, holding him close, breathing in the smell of him. Did you have fun? I managed, my voice only slightly strained. Grandpa let me steer the car in the driveway. Emma announced, her eyes bright. That's awesome, sweetheart. Paul appeared in the doorway. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with a kind face weathered by years of outdoor work. He'd retired from the fire department 5 years ago. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Concern, maybe. He knew something was wrong. "You okay, son?" he asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Lucas was chattering about ice cream flavors, and Emma was showing me a drawing she'd made at their house. I focused on them, on the normalcy of their presence, and pushed the rest away. Later, after baths and stories and the ritual of tucking them in, I came downstairs. Rachel was in the kitchen, on her phone, her back to me. Paul and Diane were in the living room, sitting where we'd sat hours earlier. Diane looked up as I entered. "Rachel said you two need to talk," she said carefully. "She asked us to come over." Of course she had. She was marshaling her troops. I felt a fresh wave of despair. This was going to be an intervention, a family meeting where they'd explain to me, gently but firmly, that I needed to accept the new reality. I sat down heavily in the armchair Rachel had occupied. "She told you." "Some of it," Paul said. His voice was neutral, unreadable. "She said you two are separating. That she wants you to move out." "That's accurate." I looked at them. These people I'd called mom and dad for 7 years. "She also told me the house is in her name, and that you'd back her up." Diane and Paul exchanged a look. It was quick, but I caught it. Something passed between them that I couldn't interpret. "We need to talk to Rachel," Diane said slowly. "Alone first. Then the four of us need to sit down together. Will you give us a few minutes?" I nodded, too tired to argue. I went into the kitchen, where Rachel was still on her phone. She glanced at me, then away, continuing her conversation in a low murmur. I poured a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the dark backyard. The playset I'd built for the kids was a shadowy outline. The garden Rachel had started and abandoned was overgrown. I heard the low murmur of voices from the living room. Then Rachel's phone buzzed, and she looked at it, frowning. "I need to take this," she said, and walked out the back door onto the patio. Through the glass, I watched her pace, talking animatedly. Mark, I assumed. Her new future. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, Paul appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Come sit down, son." His face was grave, but there was something else in his eyes. A fire I hadn't seen before. I followed him back to the living room. Diane was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Rachel hadn't returned from outside. "I'm going to ask you some questions," Paul said, settling into the armchair. "I need you to answer honestly." "Okay. When you bought this house, what was the arrangement?" I took a breath, gathering the memories. We'd been saving for 2 years. We had about $20,000 for a down payment. You and Diane offered to help, to give us $30,000 more so we could afford something bigger in a better neighborhood. We were so grateful. Rachel handled the paperwork. She said your attorney friend would do it as a gift. I signed what she gave me. I trusted her. Diane's eyes were wet. "Did you ever see the final deed?" "No. I should have. I know that now. But I never thought. I never imagined." Paul nodded slowly. "And the mortgage payments?" "I set up automatic transfers from our joint account every month. For 5 years. Every single payment. Even when work was slow, I made sure it was covered." "And the renovations? The deck, the landscaping, the new roof 2 years ago?" "I paid for those. Saved up, did the work myself where I could. The roof I hired out, but I paid from my personal savings account." Paul looked at Diane. She gave a tiny nod. "Son," Paul said, and his voice was heavy, "there's something you need to know. Something we should have told you years ago." The back door slid open, and Rachel came in, her face flushed. "What are you telling him?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Sit down, Rachel," Paul said. It wasn't a request. She hesitated, then perched on the edge of the couch, her arms crossed. Paul turned back to me. "When we gave you that money for the down payment, we had conditions. We didn't tell you because we didn't want you to feel beholden. But we told Rachel. We made it very clear." "What conditions?" I asked. "The house was to be put in both your names. Equally. That was non-negotiable. We told Rachel that if she didn't do that, the gift was off the table. We wrote her a letter. We kept a copy." I stared at him. "But the deed," she said, "it's only in her name." "It is." Paul's jaw tightened. "She lied to us. She told us she'd added you. We believed her. We never checked. We trusted our daughter." Rachel's face was white. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Paul cut her off, his voice like granite. "I understand you manipulated your husband, lied to your parents, and are now trying to throw a good man out of his home so your ex-boyfriend can move in. Is that about right? He's not my ex. We're together. I love him. You've been married for 7 years, Diane said quietly. You have 2 children. And you're telling us you love someone else so much you're willing to destroy your family and cheat the man who's supported you all these years out of his home. It's my home. You helped me buy it. We helped you and your husband buy it, Paul said. Together. That was the deal. You broke the deal. You broke the law, probably. Certainly broke every moral code there is. Rachel stood up, her hands shaking. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm your daughter. I am on your side, Paul said, and his voice cracked slightly. That's why I'm not going to let you do this. That's why I'm going to stop you from becoming the kind of person who destroys someone else's life for selfish gain. He turned to me. The house is in her name, legally. That's a problem. But there are other ways. We have the letter. We have the bank records showing the gift was contingent on joint ownership. We have your records of mortgage payments and improvements. A good lawyer can make a strong case for equitable interest for resulting trust. You're not without recourse. Rachel was crying now, ugly, angry tears. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. And he's my son, Diane said softly. He has been for 7 years. He's the father of my grandchildren. He's the man who helped me fix my garbage disposal at 10 p.m. on a Sunday. He's the man who sat with your father in the hospital when he had his bypass. He's family, and you're trying to destroy him. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Here's what's going to happen tonight, Paul said, his voice brooking no argument. Rachel, you're going to pack a bag. You're going to go stay somewhere else. Not with Mark, not tonight. You'll go to a hotel, or you'll come to our house, but you will not stay here. What? No. This is my house. It is not your house tonight. Tonight, it's the house where 2 children are sleeping. And tomorrow morning, they're going to wake up, and they need stability. They need their father. They don't need to wake up to their parents screaming and their mother's boyfriend moving in. You can't kick me out of my own house. I can, Paul said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Absolute, unshakable authority. I can, because if you stay, I will call the attorney first thing in the morning and start proceedings to recover the gift we gave you under false pretenses. I will make sure every penny we've ever given you is accounted for. I will support your husband in any legal action he takes. And I will tell anyone who asks exactly what you've done. Is that what you want? Rachel stared at him, her face a mask of disbelief and fury. You would choose him over me? I'm not choosing him over you. I'm choosing right over wrong. I'm choosing my grandchildren's well-being over your selfishness. I'm choosing the man you married over the man you're having an affair with. If you can't see the difference, that's your problem. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Rachel let out a sound that was half sob, half scream, and stormed upstairs. We heard doors slamming, drawers opening and closing. Diane came and sat beside me on the couch. She took my hand. I am so sorry, she whispered. We should have checked. We should have known. We failed you. I shook my head, unable to form words. Tears were streaming down my face, and I didn't try to stop them. 20 minutes later, Rachel came downstairs with a suitcase. She didn't look at any of us. She walked to the front door, opened it, and paused. You'll regret this, she said, her voice flat. All of you. The door closed behind her. A moment later, we heard her car start, then the sound of tires on pavement fading into the night. The silence in the living room was absolute. Paul let out a long breath and sagged in his chair, looking suddenly every one of his 68 years. Well, he said, that's done. What happens now? I asked, my voice hoarse. Now we figure out how to protect you and those kids. We get a lawyer. We document everything. We make sure Rachel can't come back tomorrow and try to throw you out while we're not here. He looked at me. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? Just in case. This is my home, I said, and the words felt different now. Stronger. I'm not leaving. Paul nodded slowly. Good. That's good. We'll stay too. If you're okay with that. Diane and I will take the guest room. Just to be here, in case. I nodded, overwhelmed by their kindness. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank us, Diane said. We're family. That's what family does. The night passed strangely, in fragments. I checked on the kids, both sleeping peacefully. I showed Paul and Diane to the guest room, the one Rachel had been using. Her things were still there, clothes, books, her laptop. Paul bagged them up and set them in the hallway. You can deal with that later, he said. For now, she can get them when she's ready to talk like an adult. I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed I'd shared with Rachel for 7 years, staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening's events. The betrayal, the confrontation, the unexpected rescue. By dawn, I had a headache and a heart full of conflicting emotions: grief for my marriage, gratitude for my in-laws, fear for the future, and a small, stubborn spark of hope. The kids woke at their usual time, oblivious to the earthquake that had shaken their world. I made pancakes, because it was Tuesday and Tuesday was apparently now the new weekend. Paul and Diane joined us at the breakfast table, and the kids were delighted to have grandparents at breakfast. Daddy, why is Grandma and Grandpa here? Emma asked, her eyes curious. They're visiting for a few days, sweetheart. Helping out. Is Mommy coming back? I hesitated, and Diane jumped in smoothly. Mommy had to go away for a little while, honey. She's taking some time for herself. But you'll see her soon, okay? Emma accepted this with the easy faith of an 8-year-old. Lucas was too busy drowning his pancakes in syrup to care. After I dropped them at school, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face spreadsheets and timelines today. I came home to find Paul on the phone, his voice low and serious. He hung up as I walked in. That was a lawyer. Old friend of mine, retired judge. He gave me some names. Good family law attorneys. We need to move fast. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and paperwork. The lawyer we chose, a sharp woman named Patricia Okonkwo, listened to my story with growing outrage. This is straightforward enough, she said, tapping her pen on her notepad. The house is the main issue. Legally, she's on the deed. But we have several avenues. The gift from her parents with the condition of joint ownership creates a resulting trust. Your mortgage payments and improvements give you equitable interest. And we have her admission, witnessed by her parents, that she intended to exclude you. That's strong evidence of bad faith. What about the kids? I asked. That's trickier. She's their mother. Unless she's unfit, she'll get some custody. But her moving her boyfriend in immediately, the affair, the attempt to evict you, these things matter. They show instability, poor judgment. We can argue for primary custody, at least temporarily, while things settle. I nodded, absorbing the information like a soldier receiving battle orders. What about her? I asked. Where is she? She's staying with her boyfriend, apparently. Her parents have been in contact, trying to get her to come to her senses. So far, no luck. A week passed. Then 2. Rachel filed for divorce. I filed a counterpetition, seeking primary custody of the children and equitable division of assets, including the house. The legal machinery ground into motion. During this time, Paul and Diane became my anchors. They stayed at the house, helping with the kids, providing moral support, running interference with the rest of the family. Not everyone understood. Rachel had siblings, aunts, cousins, and the news traveled fast. Some took her side, painting me as the villain who'd turned her parents against her. Others stayed neutral, waiting to see how things shook out. A few, the ones who knew me best, quietly offered support. The lowest point came 3 weeks in. I was at the grocery store, buying supplies for the week, when I turned down an aisle and came face to face with Mark. Rachel's Mark. He was tall, good-looking in that carefully styled way, and he was pushing a cart with Rachel in it. Literally. She was sitting in the cart, laughing at something, her legs dangling. They looked like teenagers on a date. She saw me, and the laughter died. Mark's expression hardened. "Excuse me," I said flatly, and tried to move past. Mark stepped in front of me. "We need to talk." I looked at him. "No, we don't. You need to accept reality. Rachel and I are together. The divorce is happening. The sooner you let go, the easier this will be for everyone." I felt a hot surge of anger, the first real anger I'd felt since that night. "Let me explain something to you. You're the other man in a marriage. You're moving in on a family with 2 young children. You have no moral high ground here. You have nothing to say that I want to hear. Now get out of my way." He didn't move. "The house is hers. You know that. You're going to have to leave eventually. Why drag this out?" "Because I'm not leaving my children. Because I'm not leaving the home I built. Because I have the law on my side, and I have her parents on my side, and I have the truth on my side. You have a woman who cheated on her husband. That's not a foundation for a lasting relationship. Now move." Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe. He stepped aside. I walked past, not looking back. I could feel Rachel's stare on my back, but I didn't turn. I had nothing to say to her either. The hearing for temporary custody was scheduled for 6 weeks after that night. By then, the kids had settled into a routine. They saw Rachel on weekends, at her parents' house initially, then at the small apartment she'd rented with Mark. The visits were tense. Emma came home quiet, asking questions I couldn't fully answer. Lucas was more resilient, but even he seemed subdued. The night before the hearing, Paul sat with me on the back deck, watching the stars. "You ready for this?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. We're proud of you. The way you've handled this, the way you've put the kids first, the way you've kept your head while everyone around you lost theirs. That takes strength." I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on. Holding on is strength. It's the hardest kind. He was quiet for a moment. I failed Rachel. As a parent, I gave her everything, protected her from consequences, let her believe the world revolved around her. That's why she's like this. That's my fault. You can't blame yourself for the choices she made as an adult. Maybe not. But I can take responsibility for the choices I made that shaped her. He looked at me. I'm not making that mistake again. You're my son now. Those kids are my legacy. I'll do whatever it takes to protect them. I reached over and gripped his shoulder. No words were needed. The hearing was held in a small, wood-paneled courtroom with fluorescent lights and the smell of old paper. Patricia argued eloquently, presenting evidence of Rachel's affair, her attempt to evict me, the deception about the house deed, the instability of her current living situation. Rachel's lawyer, a tired-looking man in a rumpled suit, argued that Rachel was the children's mother, that she had a right to custody, that the affair was irrelevant to her parenting. The judge, a severe woman with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, listened to both sides without expression. At the end, she looked at the papers in front of her, then at us. "I'm granting temporary primary custody to the father," she said. "The mother will have supervised visitation on weekends, to be expanded as circumstances warrant. A full evaluation will be conducted before the final custody hearing. This is in the best interest of the children, given the instability demonstrated by the mother's recent actions." Rachel burst into tears. Mark, sitting in the back row, looked like he'd been slapped. I felt a rush of relief so intense I had to grip the table to stay upright. Outside the courtroom, Rachel confronted me, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. "You did this. You turned my parents against me. You made me look like a monster. I didn't make you do anything, Rachel. You did this yourself. Every choice was yours. I hate you. I'm sorry you feel that way. For the kids' sake, I hope someday you don't." I walked away. It was the last real conversation we had for a long time. The months that followed were a grinding process of legal battles, emotional recovery, and the slow, painful work of building a new normal. The full custody hearing was scheduled for a year out, giving time for evaluations, mediation attempts, and the slow churn of the family court system. Rachel's lawyer tried to negotiate, but she was intractable, still convinced she was the victim, still blaming everyone but herself. Mark, it turned out, was not built for long-term crisis. By the 8th month, he was gone. I heard through the grapevine that he'd gotten tired of the drama, the custody battles, the constant tension. He left Rachel for a woman at his gym. Rachel was alone, living in the apartment, working a full-time job she hated, seeing her kids for a few hours each weekend under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt tired and sad and fiercely protective of my children. Paul and Diane remained my steadfast allies. They were at the house constantly, helping with homework, attending school plays, taking the kids for weekends so I could have time to myself. They never wavered, never questioned their choice. If they mourned the loss of their daughter as they'd known her, they didn't show it in front of me. But I saw it in Diane's eyes sometimes, a quiet grief, a mother's heartbreak. The final custody hearing came on a gray November morning, almost exactly a year after that night that changed everything. The evaluator's report was damning. It detailed Rachel's instability, her lack of insight into her actions, her continued refusal to accept responsibility. It recommended that primary custody remain with me, with Rachel granted limited, supervised visitation pending therapeutic intervention. Rachel's lawyer, a new one this time, tried to argue, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge, a different one from the temporary hearing, a man with a gentle voice and kind eyes, read the report, listened to the arguments, and then delivered his ruling. Primary custody is awarded to the father, he said. The mother is granted supervised visitation twice a month, to be reviewed in 1 year contingent upon her completion of counseling and demonstrated stability. The father shall retain the marital home, with the mother's interest to be bought out as part of the divorce settlement. It was over. Not completely. There would be years of co-parenting, of negotiating holidays and school events, of managing Rachel's resentment. But the core battle was won. The kids would stay with me. They would grow up in the home they knew, with the father who'd fought for them. Rachel didn't cry this time. She sat motionless, her face a mask of numbness. As we filed out, she caught my eye. For a moment, I saw something in her expression I couldn't quite name. Not hatred, not love, just emptiness. The hollow look of someone who'd lost everything and was only beginning to understand it. I didn't speak to her. There was nothing left to say. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. The house was appraised, and I took out a loan to buy out her share. It stretched my finances thin, but it was worth it. The house was mine now. Legally, officially, indisputably mine. Paul and Diane's gift, repaid in full by my assuming the entire mortgage. The deed was refiled with my name alone. The kids thrived. Emma, now 9, was a quiet observer, wise beyond her years. Lucas, 7, was still all chaos and energy, but he'd learned to channel it into sports and Legos and endless questions about how things worked. They saw their mother on designated weekends, at a neutral location, with a supervisor present. Sometimes they came home quiet. Sometimes they came home angry. But they always came home. 2 years after that night, something shifted. Rachel had completed her counseling. She'd held the same job for 18 months. She had a small apartment, modest but clean, and she'd started dating someone new. A gentle man named David who worked as a librarian and had no connection to her past chaos. At the annual review hearing, the judge, the same kind-eyed man, listened to the reports, read the therapist's recommendations, and modified the custody arrangement. Rachel was granted unsupervised visitation every other weekend, with the possibility of overnights to be added gradually. I didn't object. It was what the kids needed, what Rachel had earned. The path to redemption was long, but she was walking it. The first overnight was a trial for all of us. Emma called me at 9 p.m., her voice small. "Daddy, can I come home? Are you okay, sweetheart?" "Yeah. I miss you." I talked to her for 20 minutes, reassuring her, reminding her that she could always call, that I was always here. Rachel got on the phone, her voice strained but trying. "She's okay. Just adjusting. I'll bring her home early if she needs." "No," I said. "Let her work through it. She needs to know she can be okay there too." She stayed. The next morning, when I picked them up, Emma seemed lighter, more settled. Lucas was full of stories about the pancakes Rachel had made, the movie they'd watched, the game they'd played. Small steps, but steps. The healing was slow, non-linear, often painful. There were setbacks. Rachel forgot a school event, and Emma was devastated. There were arguments about medical decisions, about summer camp choices, about the 1,000 small negotiations of co-parenting. But gradually, imperceptibly, the hostility faded. We learned to communicate, not as spouses, not as friends, but as parents. Two people with a shared purpose, if not a shared past. Paul and Diane remained central to all our lives. They navigated the impossible position with grace, loving both their daughter and their son-in-law, supporting both households, maintaining relationships with everyone. They were the glue that held the fractured pieces together. 4 years after that night, something remarkable happened. Rachel called me. Not about the kids, not about logistics. Just called. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice hesitant, "for how you've handled everything. For not turning the kids against me. For being the stable one when I couldn't be." I was silent for a moment, processing. "I did it for them. Not for you. I know. That's what makes it meaningful. You put them first, even when I didn't. Even when I didn't deserve it." "Are you okay, Rachel?" A long pause. "I'm getting there. I'm in a good place. David is good for me. I'm in therapy, really in it this time. Working on why I did what I did. It's hard. Facing yourself is hard. It is. I know I can never undo the damage. I know you'll never trust me, and you shouldn't. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry." The words hung in the air. An apology I'd never expected, never thought I'd hear. "Thank you," I said, "for saying that. I should have said it years ago. I was too busy being angry, too busy blaming everyone else. It took losing everything to understand what I'd done." We talked for a few more minutes, about the kids, about school, about nothing important. When I hung up, I sat for a long time, staring at the wall. The grief I'd carried for so long felt lighter, somehow. Not gone, but transformed. The wound had scarred over. Today, I'm sitting on the back deck of the house that almost wasn't mine. The deck I built with my own hands, the one Rachel said was a waste of time. It's a warm summer evening, and the kids are in the yard. Emma is 14 now, a teenager with her mother's dark hair and my tendency to worry, but also a quiet strength that's entirely her own. Lucas is 12, still all chaos and energy, but taller now, his voice starting to change. In the kitchen, Paul is helping Diane prepare dinner. They're here every Sunday, a tradition that started after that night and never stopped. They're older now, slower, but their presence is as steady as ever. And Rachel? She's coming to dinner tonight. With David. It's the first time we've all been together like this, a strange new configuration of a family that was shattered and painstakingly rebuilt. The kids are excited. They love their mother, in the complicated way children love parents who've hurt them. And she's earned this, slowly, painfully, over years of showing up, of being consistent, of doing the work. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Rachel and I will ever be friends, or if we'll always be these two people connected by history and children and nothing else. I don't know if the scars will ever fully heal, or if they'll always be there, reminders of how close I came to losing everything. But I know this. I'm still here. In this house. With these kids. With these incredible people who chose me when they didn't have to. I know that love isn't always the love you expect. Sometimes it comes from the people you least anticipate. Sometimes it arrives in the form of parents who choose their son-in-law over their daughter, not because they're cruel, but because they're brave enough to choose right over blood. That night, after dinner, after the kids have gone to bed and Rachel and David have driven home, Paul and I sit on the deck with the last of the wine. "You did good, son," he says, his voice rough with age and emotion. "We did good," I correct him. "All of us." He nods, looking out at the yard where his grandchildren played hours ago. "You know, I never thought it would turn out like this. That night, when Rachel came at you with all that anger and entitlement, I thought everything was over. The family, the future, all of it. It felt over. But it wasn't. It was just different. Harder. But maybe better in some ways. We all learned things. We all grew." He looks at me. "I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. You chose to stay, to fight, to love those kids through everything. We chose to stand with you. Rachel is choosing, finally, to become the person she should have been all along. Those are choices. Every single one." I think about his words long after he and Diane have gone to bed. I think about choices. The choice Rachel made that started this. The choice I made to fight instead of flee. The choice her parents made to stand with me. The choice the kids make every day to love us all, despite our flaws. And I think about the house. This house that was almost stolen, that became a battlefield, that is now, finally, a home again. Not because of the walls, or the roof, or the deck I built, but because of the people inside it, the people who choose each other, day after day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The story isn't over. It never really is. There will be new challenges, new hurts, new choices to make. Emma will start high school next year. Lucas will discover girls and independence and all the complicated business of becoming a man. Rachel will continue her slow, careful reconstruction. Paul and Diane will grow older, and someday they won't be here, and we'll have to find a way to carry on without their steady presence. But tonight, in this moment, sitting on this deck, looking at the stars over the house that almost wasn't mine, I feel something I haven't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness. That's too simple a word. Peace. The quiet acceptance of what was, what is, and what might be. The knowledge that I did the best I could with what I had, and that sometimes, that's enough. Rachel tried to kick me out. She tried to move her ex in. She told me I didn't own the house, that her parents would back her. And in a way, she was right. They did back her. They backed her by refusing to let her destroy someone else's life. They backed her by holding her accountable. They backed her by choosing love over blind loyalty. That's the thing about families. They're not automatic. They're not guaranteed. They're built, every day, by the choices we make. And sometimes, the hardest choices, the ones that break us open and force us to rebuild, are the ones that save us in the end. I raise my glass to the stars, to the house, to the family I almost lost and somehow kept. Then I go inside, lock the door, and climb the stairs to check on my sleeping children. They're safe. They're home. And so am I. If this story of resilience and unexpected allies moved you, please consider sharing it. Subscribe for more narratives about navigating the complex terrain of family and finding strength in the most unlikely places.